If you've ever looked into the quiet eyes of an older man who lives alone, you might think you're seeing peace. But what you're actually witnessing is a life suspended, paused in motion, wrapped in silence. Behind the drawn curtains and methodical routines lies a reality most people would rather not acknowledge. But today we won't look away. Today we go inside that quiet house and we listen to the walls whisper truths too many are afraid to speak aloud. Let me take you deep into this journey, not from the surface, but from the soul. I've spent more than 30 years as a physician specializing in geriatrics and mental wellness. I've treated thousands of older men, most of them alone. Not all of them knew how much their solitude had begun to erode their health, their identity, and their hope. But let's start with one who made it painfully clear. Meet Leonard. Former mechanic. Army veteran. Widower. He was 75 when I met him, thin, slow-moving, with a wry sense of humor and a deep voice that cracked when he spoke about anything remotely emotional. The first time I visited his house, he offered me tea. The mug was chipped, the water lukewarm, but it was his way of showing he still remembered how to host. The house smelled faintly of mildew and mothballs. Photographs lined the hallway walls, frozen memories, yellowed with age. He lived surrounded by reminders but devoid of daily human warmth. Loneliness, in Leonard's case, didn't announce itself with crying fits or desperate phone calls. It showed up in skipped meals, in silence during medical checkups, in the pile of unopened mail stacked neatly by the kitchen counter. It showed in his health records too. High blood pressure, worsening diabetes, sleep problems. Loneliness amplifies every health condition. But we doctors use to treat the symptoms, not the root. Older men living alone often don't realize they've become emotionally numb. They confuse solitude with peace. They confuse emptiness with independence. But inside, most of them are carrying wounds that were never addressed. Grief becomes chronic. Stress becomes baseline. The immune system, already fragile, weakens under the invisible weight of isolation. And here's what's more chilling. Men are less likely to admit when they're in pain. Physical, emotional, psychological, it doesn't matter. Pride becomes a cage. I asked Leonard once why he never told his daughter he felt lonely. He looked at me and said, because she's got her own life. I made my choices. Why should I burden her now? He's not alone in thinking this way. In fact, many older men create an invisible wall between themselves and the rest of the world. They believe suffering in silence is strength, that not asking for help is dignity. But what it often leads to is quiet despair. They stop seeing themselves as relevant. They watch the world move forward without them, and slowly they disengage. And disengagement doesn't just mean missing birthdays or skipping social events. It leads to cognitive decline. Studies show that social isolation in seniors increases the risk of dementia by up to 50%. I've watched sharp, witty men fade into confusion because no one challenged their thinking, no one spoke to them regularly. The brain, like a muscle, needs exercise, and conversation is one of its best workouts. But let's look at another story. Harold, 80, a retired high school history teacher. Never married. Lived with his mother until she passed. Then lived alone. His home was impeccably tidy, books in alphabetical order, canned goods labeled and stacked. From the outside, it looked like someone in control. But Harold had not had a single visitor in over 2 years. Not one. His body began to fail, not from illness, but from lack of purpose. He stopped cooking real meals. Stopped opening the curtains. His world shrank down to 3 rooms, the bedroom, the kitchen, and the bathroom. That's it. The rest of the house collected dust, like parts of his personality sealed off forever. He told me once, I used to teach kids about revolutions. Now I forget what day it is. This is how invisible suffering looks. Not dramatic. Not loud. But devastating. Slow motion emotional starvation. Then there's the issue of physical safety. Many older men don't tell anyone when they fall. They lie on the floor for hours, even days. Not because they can't call for help, but because they don't want to be seen as weak. The result? Hip fractures that never fully heal. Concussions that go undiagnosed. Even minor injuries turn fatal when left untreated. And there's something else: nutrition. Many of the older men I treat are malnourished, even those with food in their pantry. They lose interest in cooking. Meals become a task instead of a pleasure. A cup of instant noodles, a slice of toast, some canned soup. That's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Day after day. The gut weakens. The mind fogs. The body wastes. And sleep? Insomnia is rampant. Not because they're not tired, but because they've stopped engaging in enough daily activity to feel naturally exhausted. Their circadian rhythms are off. They watch late-night television, nap throughout the day, then lie awake in darkness listening to the refrigerator hum. Medication adherence is another challenge. Some forget. Others choose not to. I had one patient, George, who simply stopped taking his heart medication. Not because he couldn't afford it, but because, in his words, what's the point? That phrase haunts me, what's the point? It's not just resignation. It's the quiet death of will. But let's shift. Let's look at what happens when that pattern is broken. When I introduced Harold to a local senior walking club, he resisted. He said he didn't like being around people. But I persisted. I offered to walk with him the first week. He agreed reluctantly. And that first walk? He said almost nothing. Just nodded, shuffled along. But the next week, he returned. And the week after that. By month 3, he was leading trivia questions during rest breaks. By month 6, he was dating a fellow walker named June. Reconnection doesn't require miracles. It requires intention. For some, it's a community gardening group. For others, a chess club. Even volunteering, reading to kids, sorting library books has been shown to reverse cognitive decline and boost emotional well-being. And it's not just about socializing. It's about being seen, heard, remembered. We need to build communities that don't write off older men as retired, expired, or obsolete. Because they're not. They're archives of wisdom. Banks of stories. They've lived through wars, technological revolutions, heartbreaks, and recoveries. And yet, we leave them to fade away in recliners watching cable news on low volume. So here's what I want you to take from this. If you are an older man living alone, your story isn't over. There are people who want to hear from you. Friends you haven't met yet. Conversations that could ignite your spirit again. There is a future for you, but you must choose it. And if you know someone like Leonard, like Harold, like George, don't just check in. Invite them to participate. Give them purpose, not pity. Because the truth is, older men who live without women are not broken. They're waiting for recognition, for inclusion, for that one moment when someone sees them and says, you still matter. And you do. The silence is loud, but it can be interrupted with kindness, with courage, with connection.